Yes.
Dakshdeep, I have another question for you. As organizations increasingly integrate AI into HR systems, what do you see the biggest barriers to implementation? How can companies overcome these challenges effectively?
I think two or three challenges. One, which I tried to cover up a bit in my last response as well. One is driving change management and the trust aspect of it. I think employees' skepticism about AI making decisions and perhaps impacting their career is way high today. Uh, that's the biggest thing that has to get overcome. Then another thing that comes across within this is HR teams' resistance to change. Not only for AI. I mean, AI is still I'll still call it as a second hurdle to be done. I think you go ahead to an organization who perhaps does a lot of processes manually or in an offline fashion or a semi-automated fashion, and if you give them a tool, right, to say this is how, and honestly, that's how all HRMS players are running their business today, right? That's the productivity aspect that you want to drive in. The biggest thing that comes across is there is a resistance to change that comes across because again, people feel that what they are doing or they are habitual of doing, that's the best way, right? So I think that's the second thing. The third is, I mean, how do you try and overcome this? Is the idea is to build in transparency and a communication channel within the organization. You should tell them that, boss, this is where AI systems will play a role, and this is where the boundary is there, and that's where human intervention is needed. The idea and the second aspect in terms of driving those change, in terms of resistance to change, could be um, say involving the right stakeholders at the right time. I think a lot of organizations today feel that change management is something when a system goes live has to be done. I think the change management has to be done as early as when you start the workshops, so as you have the right set of stakeholders and you can create that impact within a larger organization. So that's one challenge ideally. The second challenge that comes across is typically on the cost and the ROI. uh, Now, obviously, when you invest into an AI, it asks for an initial investment. Even if you go and take a paid version of a chat GPT, they charge you typically per hit, right? So the number of hits or the number of times you trigger the API to pull out a response, that's where the costing comes in. And obviously, there is a one-time cost of obviously procuring those AI engines as well. Until unless the exception is the company goes ahead and creates its own LLM. I mean, apart from that, ideally, you'll end up using either a Claude or a Chat GPT or one of these, right? The other idea is, I think, one should develop good comprehensive matrices to capture both quantitative and qualitative benefits when you try and drive any such initiative. People always try and link ROI to money. There is a lot of impact on how now. Let's say you had a website and which had jobs posted. If you're trying to make certain things, I think one of the key, a very nascent example could be, has the traffic increased on that website? Are you getting more leads from that page of yours if you have changed an ATS for yourself, right? Are people being more engaged? How are you now, let's say about an onboarding of an employee, how are you engaging those 60 to 90 day kind of a period that every employee goes through when he or she is switching the job? I think it's important to have specific KRs and evaluation criteria to identify the same. So I think the first thing is the data that exists within the systems today, right, is all fragmented, inconsistent. I have seen when I go to customers and I ask them for implementation that help me with the data that we'll use to set up the system. Uh, and it's basic employee information, right, that within the construct of keeping personalization in space, obviously we are governed by contracts and stuff. um, we ask for certain data points, right, that how the system will start functioning. And you won't believe the average time that an organization takes, apart from a very few handful of the organizations, is 40 to 45 days. Now, if you are using something, if you were driving a system, that typically means two things. One, you didn't have data, or you had data which was just splitted across multiple systems. And I think the best way that an organization should start doing it is, it's a very basic step. Before you enter into any of these digitization initiatives, you should do a thorough data cleanup and a standardization before any AI or any tech implementation. That should be ideally a homework. If you know that you are driving and you are entering into that path, this should be ideally a pre-work rather than saying once we sign up, once we enter, that's something then we'll do. And I think, as Sandeep was also saying, that we should have good data governance frameworks that help you support those AI integrations and stuff to ensure that the scenarios still remain unbiased and the systems are intelligent enough to respond to employees.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Daksh. I think it was a great insight to a lot of realistic issues, and your viewpoints were definitely beneficial.